What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having an amazing day. Today I've got for you a truly generational Reddit story that is just so good. I'm just gonna let the title speak for itself on this one. I mean, it's just up there. It has to be up there. It just has to be, with one of the greatest titles to a Reddit post of all time. I think this story has a really good chance of being in my top 10 Reddit stories of 2025 when we get to the end of the year. It's just crazy. So without further ado, sit back, relax, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and listen to this absolute belter of a title. My mother-in-law asked my husband to subscribe to her OnlyFans to support her. My mother-in-law, who is 40, has always been very open about sex. When I first met my husband, she managed a sex toy store. About a year ago, she started working towards a degree on sexual health and wellness. She nude models for a local artist, and around a month ago, she started an OnlyFans account. Sex and an openness about it has always been an extraordinarily normal thing for her. I have absolutely nothing against her working in the sex industry. That's her forte, and I'm happy that she's doing well and enjoying what she does. However, I've had some slight concerns about it before. Not specifically her working in the sex industry or her openness in general, more so how open she is, especially with her own kids. For example, my husband and I started dating in high school when she was managing the sex store. When she'd come home from work, she would stop by my husband's boyfriend at the time's room and hand us sample sizes of different lubes and sensation creams, saying, "I thought you guys might want to try some of these." It always made us both pretty uncomfortable, and it was extremely awkward to have my boyfriend's mum hand me things to try sexually with her son. But nonetheless, the most conversation that my husband and I ever had about it back then was about how awkward it was. Awkward and uncomfortable enough that we never actually used these things. They just piled up on a shelf by his bed. Another time, while we were dating, fresh out of high school, we were hanging out with his sisters. His mum was still working at the sex toy shop. Once in a while, she'd come home with silly toys, and on this night, she walked in with a 1-foot-long, glittery you-know-what. She playfully whipped it around towards us like a sword. His sisters screamed and ran from her, and for a while, we all laughed and had fun about it, snatching it from one another and chasing each other around with the glitter schlong. Not quite sure I can say that, but anyway. Eventually, my husband's sister, who was 17 at the time, said something like, "Mum, you better not have brought that home to use. That's crazy." My husband chimed off an "ooh," saying he didn't want to think about that. And his mum laughed and replied, "Oh no, that's silicone. You know the toys that I use are glass." Again, my husband made a weird face but didn't say anything. When we got to his room, I said that it was weird that his mum talked to her children about what she used to get her rocks off. And he told me that she's always been way too open about things that none of them wanted to know, but that she's always just been this way, so he's gotten used to tuning it out. As time went on, I got used to the openness, and it was just that, being too open about personal stuff within conversation. However, yesterday the openness went too far. My husband and I were sitting in our living room watching TV. My husband got a text from his mum and opened it and had a visceral reaction. He tossed his phone down, stood up, walked away from it with his hands over his face while saying things like, "Oh my god," and "holy trash" under his breath. Naturally, I thought someone had died, so I started frantically asking what was wrong. All he said was that he didn't even want to open his phone again. I asked again what was wrong, and he told me that his mum just sent him pictures. I was confused, but my concern started to grow. I asked what he meant by pictures, and he hesitated before saying, "I don't want to ask you to look, but I can't open it back up to delete it myself, so I need you to." My stomach dropped. I opened his phone to see what was there, and I immediately felt nauseous. There was a text that read, "Hey, I know you've always supported me, and I wanted to see if you'd be willing to subscribe to my OnlyFans so that I can get my numbers up while I'm getting started. Of course, I don't expect or want you looking through it, but the more subscriber numbers I have, the more engagement I can get. I was also wondering if you'd be willing to share my link to some of your friends at work." My husband is in a male-dominated blue-collar job. The pics I included are to send to them with the link, but don't tell them I'm your mum. and under was the pictures. There were 3 nude photos of his mother, and not just naked in a mirror or pic of the boobs kind of photos. They were full-on pornographic photos. One of her tied up in BDSM gear, one of her face down, butt up on her bed, and one of her with legs spread and a you-know-what halfway in her mouth. My blood was boiling. I deleted what she'd sent, and my husband and I were both silent for a moment. I didn't know what else to say or do, so I broke the silence by asking, "What now?" My husband told me to block his mum on his phone, so I did. I asked if this was something his mum has done before, and he said no. He told me that in the past, she's asked if he wanted to see pictures of the drawings she posed for. He always felt a bit guilty saying no, so he simply didn't respond when she asked, and she never sent it. Then my husband went pale and started walking to the bathroom, saying he felt sick. While he was in there, I blocked his mum on my phone as well, including her social media. When my husband came back out of the bathroom, he called his sister. He asked her if she was with their mum, and when she said no, he explained to her what had just gone down. His sister was also speechless. Then he asked her not to say anything to other family members right now, and explained that neither him or I would be in contact with their mum for a while. He also told her that any time we were home for a visit, he would let his sisters know so that we could plan to see them, but that his mum would not be included in those plans from here on out. My mother-in-law quickly realised that she was blocked on everything by the both of us, and by that night, she had the whole family blowing up our phones asking why. The constant messages haven't stopped, and so far we've just muted our phones as we don't even know what to say. How do you explain that your mother sent you her homemade prawn? Okay, so there we go. That is it for the original post. As I said in the introduction, we have a couple of updates to come in this one. Before we get into the first update though, let's first of all have a look at some of the comments. Somebody said under this first post, quoting, "Covert incest is a form of non-physical sexual abuse. Examples of covert incest could be the parents sharing intimate, graphic details of their own sex life to the child, practicing voyeurism, exhibitionism, inappropriate sharing of images, and similar behaviors that, while still being sexual abuse, are described as covert for their intangible nature." Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense to me. That sounds exactly like covert incest. Goodness me. OP replied saying, "Thank you for these comments. I've never heard of covert incest, but now I know exactly what is going on, and my husband and I both have some reading up to do." Somebody else said, "When anyone asks why she's blocked, tell them the truth. She sent her OF link and pornographic photos of herself to him, and that crossed a major boundary that he shouldn't have even had to place. Her behavior when he was younger is concerning. I'd be discussing it with a therapist to decide how to move forward, as there is likely some more vomit-inducing things in his past that he might not realise are actually things she groomed him to believing was normal." OP replied to this saying, "This has been a concern of mine since the sex toy discussion, and this incident affirmed that for me. When my husband gets home, I plan on asking about the past a bit, but I don't want to pry, as I don't want to rehash something that he isn't ready to discuss with me, especially things that could be traumatizing. I do know that when we were dating, there was a bit of an issue with her asking explicit details about his sex life, and even about me. Do you prefer a clean-shaved girl? Was one of them. Despite him not answering, she gave him a bikini shaving set from her shop to give to me. Have you tried these positions? I think she would enjoy them. Are you guys using lube? You need to be using lube. Does she prefer ribbed condoms? To name just a few. I know these things made my husband wildly uncomfortable, and when I asked him why he never said to just stop, he told me he has in the past, but she got extremely defensive and acted offended. She would go on a tangent about how she wanted him to be comfortable coming to her about everything, and how sex was a normal part of life that they should be able to discuss. That's always been something that concerned me. We both go to regular counselling, so again, without prying, I'm going to suggest diving into his mother's past with this behaviour in therapy." And finally, somebody suggested it would be a good time for your husband to tell your mother-in-law that he's going to take a break from her. An email saying he's wanted to support her in her interests, even though they disturb him. This request that she send those personal pictures of herself to co-workers is highly inappropriate, whether or not he told them she was a relative. That is his job. Those are unsolicited sexual pictures. They are pictures of his mother, which he personally finds disturbing. Those are co-workers who could report him to his superiors. His mother is old enough to know that 1, it's inappropriate to be sharing sexual details with her children unless they have asked her to. 2, unsolicited sexual content is unsuitable for sharing in general public unless it is acceptable, i.e. Pride Day, a health fair, fetish flea, etc. And 3, soliciting sexual content in the workplace is a potential firing offence. It's time for your husband to be blunt with your mother-in-law and tell her she is deeply disturbing him. Opie replied to this, "My husband is in the military. It isn't just a firing, it's a sharp case with a dishonourable discharge." Wow, well that, if possible, makes it even worse. Now, was anyone else, while listening to that, thinking about the start of sex education? Like specifically episode 1, season 1, episode 1. If you've not seen it, you might not be sure what I'm saying here. And I haven't seen the whole series, I'm going to be honest. I've just watched like a few episodes of the first season. I know I should watch more. All right, I get it. Relax. But I was kind of thinking, if you don't know, one of the main characters' mums is like a sex therapist, and she's pretty obviously openly sexual, or not sexual, but like she she doesn't hide away from talking about sex with her son, and that makes him pretty uncomfortable. Whatever. So I was kind of getting that sort of vibe and thinking, you know what? Like, yeah, this is really, really strange, but it's not the end of the world. But it just got weirder and weirder and weirder. And look, I'm not against sort of, children and parents having that sort of relationship where they talk about everything and they talk about sex and what they've been up to in their free time. I'm all for that. I'm not saying I have that relationship myself with my parents. Maybe one day. I doubt it. It's not really my vibe or theirs, I don't think. But I know some of my friends who will speak about that sort of stuff with their parents pretty openly. Power to them. I think it's getting a little bit too far here. Even before the pictures and saying, oh yeah, do you want to just share my OnlyFans? That's right, your mum's OnlyFans to all your co-workers. Even before that, I think we were overstepping a couple of boundaries. And when that person is listed in the comments down below, covert incest, and given the definition there, I mean, this is exactly what it is. It's not physical incest, but sending your son like nudes of yourself, it's got to be illegal. And I think it is. Okay, let's get into the first update here. This was posted on the same day, 15 hours later. When my husband got home from work today, he did have me recover the messages for evidence should it be needed. That's a good idea, actually. I screenshotted the message with timestamps and each of the photos. In the photos, I scribbled over her not so private areas as well. After that, I sent the images to my phone and once again deleted the messages from his phone, both in his mother's texts and mine, per husband's request. This was something that several people suggested in the comments of the previous post. And believe me, we were on the same page before I even read them. My husband and I are also regulars in therapy, both individual and couples counselling. When we got married, we agreed that doing counselling from the get-go was a good idea. Not because we have problems in our marriage, but it gives us the tools to confront issues in the future and keeps us on the same page 100% of the time. That being said, I asked my husband if he'd ever mentioned his mother's sexualness in his own therapy, and he said no. Since it's how he's always been raised, he saw it as mostly normal. I suggested this should most definitely be brought up at his next session, and he agreed. I also asked if there was anything that has happened that was a bit overboard in the past. Outside of conversation, he said that his mother would often come home from work with new lingerie, and she would put it on and wear it around the house for the rest of the night as if they were regular clothes. When she'd do this, he'd either stay in his room or go to a friend's house because it made him uncomfortable. Yeah, this woman is weird. I think we all know that. But she's becoming weirder and weirder the more we find out about her. And this, as I said, is bordering, if not is already there, in terms of breaking the law. Several people asked why there hasn't been a conversation about her talking about uncomfortable topics. There has been. When my husband and I were dating, both of us minors, she would talk to my husband about our sex life explicitly. Some of the questions she'd ask him are if he likes girls who are clean shaven, if him and I were using lube, if I preferred rib condoms, if we tried certain positions, even if I preferred stimulation via clitoris or G-spot. Wow. When she'd ask these things, my husband simply wouldn't answer with more than, I don't know, but eventually he did tell her to stop. He told her that he didn't want to talk about these things with her, that he knew I wouldn't want her talking about those things with her, and that her asking this stuff made him extremely uncomfortable. Her response was to get defensive, and act as if she'd been disrespected. She would say that sex was normal, that she should be able to have these conversations with her son. She even accused him of shaming her sexuality. So he just went back to ignoring the questions altogether. Some suggested that we have an in-person conversation with her about this happening. Not only do we live far away, but we aren't ready for a conversation about it. And we especially aren't ready to discuss it in person. This happened yesterday afternoon, and it will honestly be a very long time before any sort of communication happens with her at all. I did find out what she'd been telling family. She's telling them that she asked if her son supported her, not if he would subscribe and share her content. That is why family have been reaching out and asking why we blocked her for asking that. We will be telling family exactly what happened, but we aren't quite ready to do so yet, and that will come within the next few days. We're still processing all of what's going on. My husband has a therapy session tomorrow, and we have one together the next day. We'll likely wait to talk about this with family until after our sessions. That way we can get our ducks in a row a bit more, and we're even considering legal action. Again, that is something we'll bring up with our therapists before continuing. That is the main reason we took screenshot evidence. For those curious, yes, mother-in-law is young. She had my husband at 16, 17, and we got married young as well. Very common among my family and in the field of work he is in. And that field of work is the military. So him sharing his mother's content would heavily affect him. Not just the firing, that would give him a SHARP, which is sexual harassment/assault response and prevention case, and a possible dishonorable discharge, which would make it extremely difficult to go on after the military. That is all I have for an update right now, but trust that there will be another. Thank you so much for all the advice and support I received on my last post. I seriously gained such good info from the comments, and it's been really helpful. Okay, so before we get into the final update, which was posted just 2 days later, just want to read this one comment. Somebody said, "This is so, I have no words for it, just effed up. What she did was sexual harassment, sending pornographic content without consent, not to mention the whole childhood. There is something like being sex positive, yeah, but then there's harassment, and his mother definitely crossed the line over and over again." Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Like, I think sex positivity can be a good thing, but I mean, we're nowhere near this. Arguably, we never were. From the very beginning here, as soon as she started, like, you know, getting toys involved and stuff and like chucking around, probably went a little bit too far. Now, someone asked an interesting question. Does OP's husband look like his biological father? And you can probably sort of see what they're getting at there. OP said, "Actually, crazy that you mention it. My husband looks exactly like his bio dad. I mean, down to the hair color, same eyes, and when my husband has facial hair, it's uncanny. He even has a similar tattoo in a similar spot that his bio dad had. Of course, we had no idea at the time because my husband's dad walked out when he was very young. But after he got that tattoo, his mother mentioned that it was in the same spot, with the exception of a few details. It was practically the same tattoo." Okay then, so final update. My husband and I have spoken with therapists about the entire situation, and we've drawn a conclusion to how we will handle things. As advised by our therapist, and based on what we've planned ourselves, my mother-in-law will be cut off until she does the self-work, and is no longer overly sexual towards family. That being said, my husband and I are prepared for her to be cut off permanently. She will likely not attend therapy herself, as she sees it as unimportant. I'm not sure if her opinion comes from her visiting a therapist previously, but she does believe that, quote, "therapists just tell you everything wrong with yourself and why you need to change. They don't actually try to help your mental health, just make it worse," end quote. I'm sure everyone can imagine what has caused her to draw those conclusions. As of now, my husband and I will not be pushing legal action. We've decided that for us at this time, we'd prefer to lay down the law in what we feel comfortable with. If that's respected, that's great, and nothing more will come of it on our end. If that isn't, and there are more attempts to reach us, such as creating accounts, etc., we'll most likely seek out a restraining order. As I mentioned previously, I've saved the screenshots from the original issue, so we will have that to present if needed. On to family. As a reminder, my husband's side of the family was blowing up our phones, asking why on earth we'd block my mother-in-law. Well, what she told them was that we blocked her after she simply asked for our support in the things she's doing. What they didn't know was that she sent the photos. We told them. We didn't send the photos, of course, but we did describe them. Things were understood quickly and nothing more was said. I don't know if family has taken it upon themselves to confront her about this. If they have, great, she needs it. If they haven't, Oh well. Now, from our perspective, I was raised in a family where everything was very taboo. Sex, sexuality, our bodies, even our periods were difficult to talk about. So much so that when my mum found out I had a crush on a boy when I was 13, I cried and profusely apologized because I thought I'd be in a lot of trouble. Asking questions wasn't okay either, so when I did have questions, I couldn't simply ask. For example, I overheard my mum say the word prawn and I didn't know what it meant. I asked what it meant and I got sent to my room. So, at 7 years old, I grabbed the family tablet and I googled it. I saw a bunch of naked people, got scared, put the iPad back in the living room. When my parents checked the search history that night, I was screamed at and not allowed to touch electronics for the rest of the year. So, with all of that in mind, a sex-positive family was so incredibly foreign to me. The idea of being able to go to your mum, ask about sex or your body, and have a conversation instead of getting in trouble was completely new. When my husband and I were dating, I never knew that his mum was going too far. I thought that this simply was sex positivity. Of course, I had intuition that things went too far at times, like when I questioned the toy conversation, but when the response to my questions were, she's just really open, I chalked it up to that, and I didn't really question it anymore. To answer some common questions, my mother-in-law is not this much when it comes to her daughters. I always assumed it was because they were younger, but the pictures being sent to only my husband really hammered the nail into the covert incest coffin. Come to find out, my mother-in-law also isn't quite as open with my sister-in-laws. She's open about her own doings, but doesn't meddle in their own like she did my husband. I mentioned before that she'd questioned my husband on our sex life when we were dating. Another phone call with my middle sister-in-law revealed that she's absolutely never done that to the girls. In fact, there have been times where she's overheard my sister-in-law saying something about their boyfriends, and she'd say, lower your voice, I don't want to know. Whereas she would straight up ask my husband about sex. Wow, very interesting. Another common question was, where's father-in-law? Well, he's never been in the picture. As I said, he left when my mother-in-law was pregnant with her youngest daughter. My mother-in-law also doesn't have a father herself because he left when she was a baby, and there aren't a lot of men in the family. 2 distant uncles, a few cousins, but as far as close family, my husband was the only male growing up. My husband looks exactly like his bio dad. Same build, same hair type and colour, same bone structure, same eye shape, even a very similar birthmark. That fact makes this even more gross altogether. Why does that make it gross? I see. Took me a second there, guys, but I see. So your mother-in-law is attracted to her own son. Is that really what the conclusion of this story is? That? I mean, I don't want that to be the case, but I think with all the information it has to be. Anyway, let's finish this off. And finally, OP says, no, we don't have children. However, I have always had concerns about leaving children alone with her because of the openness. I will know when my future children are ready to know about certain topics, and those conversations will come from my husband and I, and only us. I've always been concerned that my mother-in-law would discard our opinions on that and give our future children the bird and the bees talk whenever she felt like it. Unless she cannot fix whatever is wrong in her brain, she will not ever be alone with our kids, and even possibly never know them. But overall, this is my final in the whole situation. Thank you so much to everyone for all of the advice. I didn't even know the term covert incest before posting, and I'm grateful that I do now. It's given my husband and I something to do a little research about, and it's changed our perspective on the past quite a bit. My husband will be taking all of this into therapy more than just his last sessions, and at my next personal session, I'll likely bring it up too. It's also a topic that will be discussed at counselling together more than just yesterday's session as well. Again, thank you everyone. Okay, let's round things off with a couple of comments. Somebody said, this is definitely some form of essay to your husband, and I'm glad you two are taking the steps to process it and get to the root cause, as well as protecting yourselves. What she's done is wildly inappropriate and frankly disgusting. Somebody else said, your mother-in-law is not going to go to therapy until she finds a problem within herself, which seems unlikely. Just like addicts, they won't get clean until they truly want to do it for themselves. She has to hit rock bottom and want to change for herself. Going no contact is probably the best solution. Your poor husband. It's one thing to ask for support, but to actually ask your own child to subscribe to your OnlyFans is gross. Wow, what a final sentence there. Just in case you'd forgotten what happened in that story. This mum asked her son to subscribe to her OnlyFans. I mean, honestly, I sort of want to just do a round of applause there for the most ludicrous title and story of all time. And I know I do say that quite often, but wow. Imagine asking your son, mate, just sub to my OF. It's only $5 a month and you get to see feet pics. Come on, sign up. I think we're going to leave it there, guys. There's not too much I can say about this one. The story speaks for itself. Genuinely generational, as I said in the intro. I think that's making a list. Not quite sure which list. I think this mum is going to be on a list as well. How do I even react to that? If you want more crazy stuff like that right away, check out this episode. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and turn notifications on for the next crazy story that I release coming tomorrow.